Chosen one. Stop scrolling for just a moment. Heaven has pressed pause on everything around you because there is a word written for your spirit alone. You have obeyed when others mocked, when they doubted, when they walked away laughing at your restraint. But the one who sees in secret has written your name in his remembrance book. You did not bow to convenience. You did not compromise when it would have been easy to fit in. You stood still when the world told you to move. And you moved when heaven whispered. Now, that quiet obedience unseen by man has thundered loudly in heaven. You see, obedience is not glamorous in the moment. It rarely receives applause. And it almost never feels like victory when you're walking through it. Yet you obeyed in tears. You obeyed in confusion. You obeyed even when it felt like the silence of God was heavier than his presence. But he was watching, measuring your steps, recording your decisions. And now heaven moves on your behalf. As Jesus himself declared in the Gospel of Luke, chapter 11, verse 28, "Blessed are those who hear God's word and obey it." You heard his word. And though it cost you reputation, relationships, and rest, you chose obedience over applause. That decision separated you. It made you different. You were not meant to blend in. You were meant to stand apart. When others treated his instructions as optional suggestions, you treated them as sacred commands. And heaven loves that about you. There were nights you questioned, was it worth it? There were moments you felt invisible, unseen, forgotten. Yet what if I told you that the silence was God's setup, that your hidden season was not punishment but preparation? Every time you obeyed, a seed was planted in heaven's soil. And today, heaven is ready for harvest. You have been through the fire and the pruning, through the seasons where your obedience looked like loss. But what they don't know is that obedience is never loss. It is the down payment for divine reward. God was shaping your capacity to carry what he is about to release. You couldn't receive it back then because you weren't yet ready to sustain it. But now, the posture of your heart has qualified you for heaven's blessing. Listen carefully. Chosen one, this is not coincidence. You didn't stumble upon this message. You are hearing this because heaven is confirming what your spirit has quietly known. You are entering your reward season. You obeyed when others didn't. And now God delights in blessing your life. Do you feel that stirring in your chest? That is heaven's witness. Angels have been assigned to you for this very hour. The same obedience that once made you an outcast now makes you a candidate for overflow. You've graduated from the tests of waiting to the season of receiving. Some of the people who walked away from you will see your elevation and not understand it. But it will not come by your effort, it will come by your obedience. You don't have to chase vindication. Obedience carries its own proof. God is about to show why he asked you to do things that made no sense to others. Every no you obeyed was protecting your yes moment now. This is the hour of reward. Heaven is smiling upon your sacrifice. The stillness you maintained in the storm was worship louder than any song. The prayers you whispered through exhaustion became incense rising before the throne. God heard you. And now he answers in blessings, not in words. You have not missed your moment. You are stepping into it. You are not late. You are right on heaven's time. So, lift your head. Chosen one. The same God who tested your obedience is the God who delights in rewarding it. Your waiting has not been wasted. It has been a witness. Your tears were not ignored. They were counted. And now, The very thing you thought was delayed is about to arrive with interest. If this word resonates in your spirit, pause and breathe it in. Type 777 inches, the comments, as a prophetic act that you receive the blessing appointed for the obedient. Like, share, and subscribe so this word can reach another soul who is standing where you once stood, unsure if obedience still matters. Tell them it does. You are the proof. Heaven rejoices over the one who chooses to obey when others turn away. And today, heaven rejoices over you. You have walked through seasons that felt like deserts. Chosen one. Dry places where prayer seemed to echo off silent walls. Where faith felt like grasping wind. You thought perhaps God had forgotten you, or that your obedience had gone unnoticed. But in truth, you were being tested not for punishment, but for promotion. Heaven does not entrust great things to untested hearts. The weight of blessing requires the strength of proven faith. Every unanswered prayer, every delay that made your hope tremble, every door that shut just as you thought you were through, it was all part of a hidden examination. You didn't know it at the time, but you were sitting for heaven's most sacred test, the test of unseen obedience. This test is not graded in comfort, but in character. And though it stretched you to breaking, you did not break. You bent toward faith instead of falling into bitterness. You chose to trust, even when trust hurt. Heaven has a strange way of promoting its own. It does not measure greatness by popularity, but by endurance. When no one clapped for you, when no one saw your quiet faithfulness, when no one said thank you for your obedience, the eyes of heaven never left you. They recorded each act of surrender, every moment of restraint, every step you took when you wanted to quit. It is through such hidden testing that God separates the called from the chosen. Many begin with passion, but only those who endure testing finish with power. You endured. You stayed when others left. You prayed when others complained. You trusted when others gave up. You were being refined like gold in a furnace, not destroyed, but purified. The apostle reminds us in his letter to James, chapter 1, verse 12, "Blessed is the one who perseveres under trial. They will receive the crown of life the Lord promised to those who love him." That crown is not just a symbol of eternity, it is also the evidence of earthly favor that follows obedience. You are standing on the threshold of that promise now. Every tear that fell during your testing watered the soil of your destiny. The dry ground is about to bloom because heaven always rewards endurance. Do you remember the moments when you wanted to give up? When the temptation whispered, "It's not worth it." Those moments were not signs of weakness, they were signs of warfare. The enemy only fights what threatens him. Your obedience has been an act of rebellion against darkness itself. Every time you obeyed God, you declared war on the enemy's plan to keep you small, bitter, and broken. You fought back, not with words, but with faith. The tests were never about what you could lose, they were about what you could be trusted to carry. God needed to know that you would choose his voice over the noise of fear, his timing over your impatience, his will over your comfort. You did. That's why the atmosphere around you is shifting. Tests always precede transformation. The wilderness is always the path to the promised land. You were not being punished in your hidden season, you were being prepared. You didn't fail the test by feeling tired, or by questioning in the dark. The only failure would have been walking away, and you didn't. You stayed. You showed heaven that your love for God was not transactional. You obeyed even when there was no visible reward. That is rare. And heaven rewards the rare. Beloved, testing reveals trust. Every storm you faced revealed more of God's faith in you. He knew you would not fold. He knew that if He allowed you to be stretched, you would expand, not snap. And now, because you have passed what others refused to face, the favor that follows is greater than you can comprehend. There is a sound in the spirit around those who pass their tests. It is the sound of doors unlocking, of timelines accelerating, of angels repositioning. The tests were long, but they have qualified you for rapid release. What took others years will take you months. Because endurance is the currency of heaven, you paid the price in patience, and the return is abundance. Some people may wonder how you suddenly step into blessing after years of stillness. Let them wonder. They did not see the hidden tests. They only see the visible results. You do not owe anyone an explanation for favor that was forged in fire. The reward for quiet endurance is loud blessing. Chosen one, lift your eyes from the dust. You are not still in testing, you are emerging from it. You are walking out of the wilderness, carrying wisdom, maturity, and divine authority. Every delay has shaped your discernment. Every rejection has refined your hearing. You are not who you were when the testing began. You are stronger, sharper, and more spiritually precise. There was a time, chosen one, when your obedience made you look foolish. You stood where others ran. You forgave when others held grudges. You prayed for those who spoke against you. You followed divine instructions that made no logical sense. And they laughed. They said you were too spiritual, too serious, too surrendered. They could not understand that your loyalty was not to comfort, but to covenant. When others walked away, you stayed. When they mocked the voice of heaven, you bowed before it. What they did not know was that obedience always separates. The moment you said yes to God, you drew an invisible line in the sand. You crossed from ordinary existence into divine purpose, and with that decision came misunderstanding. People you loved began to distance themselves, not because you changed for the worse, but because your light exposed what they were unwilling to face. Scripture says in the Gospel of John, chapter 15, verse 14, "You are my friends if you do what I command." End of 4. Friendship with God has always been costly. It requires walking away from those who refuse His voice. You learned that lesson early. When others dismissed conviction as control, you embraced it as guidance. And while they chose the ease of compromise, you chose the weight of obedience. Now, heaven is shifting the story. The same obedience that isolated you is about to elevate you. You must understand, obedience never leaves you empty. It might strip you for a season, but it only does so to make room for divine fullness. The things you lost in obedience were never meant to stay. God removed them so that He could build something eternal. They left, but His presence remained, and His presence is always the greater portion. Every time they mocked you for being too obedient, heaven added another layer of favor to your destiny. You were never wasting time by obeying. You were investing it. While others collected moments, you were collecting eternal value. They saw you as delayed, but God saw you as developed. They saw you as behind, but God saw you as becoming. You see, obedience has a voice, that only heaven hears. When you stayed silent instead of arguing, when you waited instead of forcing, when you prayed instead of proving yourself, that was the sound of worship. It rose like fragrance before the throne, and heaven kept record of every instance. Nothing was wasted. Every moment of restraint built a bridge to your reward. And now, those who mocked you will witness the fruit of your faith. The same ones who called you naive will see that your patience was prophecy. They will recognize that you weren't following your feelings, you were following the whisper of eternity. Chosen one. This is not the time to look back in bitterness. Do not seek validation from those who couldn't see your value. They walked away because they could not walk where you were going. Their exit was not rejection, it was redirection. God allowed it so that no one could take credit for what He is about to do in your life. The people who mocked you are not your enemies, they were your mirrors. They showed you what you could have become if you chose disobedience. Their laughter only proved how deep your commitment truly was. Do not despise them. Bless them, for they confirmed your calling. Your obedience has separated you for divine use. Heaven's spotlight is moving now, not toward the loud or the proud, but toward the loyal. And you, beloved, have proven loyal. The Lord is about to make your obedience visible. The very ones who doubted your faith will be forced to acknowledge your fruit. The season of being overlooked is over. The season of being displayed has begun. Do you sense it? The shift in the air, the quiet vindication of heaven. You don't need to defend yourself anymore. Your results will speak. Your peace will speak. Your elevation will speak. So when you feel tempted to explain yourself to those who left, remember this: the same obedience they ridiculed is the key unlocking your blessing now. You owe no explanations for what obedience produces. Let the results preach the sermon. If this word is stirring something deep inside your spirit, then write this as your declaration: I still obey. Type it below, not as a comment to me, but as a covenant between you and heaven. I still obey means that despite misunderstanding, despite isolation, despite ridicule, your heart remains anchored in divine instruction. It is your way of saying, I'm still standing, still listening, still surrendered. It is a prophetic act that confirms to heaven that your loyalty did not end when the applause stopped. Because the truth is, chosen one, you obeyed when they didn't. You stood when they bowed. You waited when they wandered. And now, the God who tests hearts is ready to bless the one who never turned away. Your obedience has not been forgotten. It has been scheduled for reward. Chosen one. There are things you went through that no one will ever know about. Silent wars fought behind calm smiles. Nights of quiet tears that no one asked about. Prayers whispered when your strength was fading. You carried burdens others didn't see. Yet you never complained. You could have quit. But something inside you refused to let go. That something was not pride, it was purpose. You were built to endure what would have broken others. Heaven saw every moment. The Father counted each tear as it fell, recording them not as weakness, but as worship. Every time you cried out and still said, I trust you, heaven took note. You were not ignored, you were being observed. You were not forgotten, you were being written into a greater story. We are reminded through the writings of David in the Psalms, chapter 56, verse 8, You keep track of all my sorrows. You have collected all my tears in your bottle. You have recorded each one in your book. And That verse is not poetry, it is reality. God has a record of your pain. The world saw your silence, but heaven saw your struggle, and heaven decided that none of it would be wasted. Every moment of endurance became a seed for the season you are about to enter. You might think, but I lost so much. Yes, you did, but what you lost was temporal. And what you are about to gain is eternal. There is no wasted pain in the life of the obedient. The tears you shed became ink in heaven's book, writing your testimony for the generations to come. Others will read your story and find faith because you chose not to give up. When you look back, you will realize that even the disappointments were divine appointments. Every closed door redirected you toward a path you wouldn't have chosen on your own. Each no protected you from what could have destroyed your destiny. You didn't see it at the time. But heaven's silence was not rejection, it was redirection. Sometimes, God's greatest mercy is in the moments He hides you. When you were ready to be seen, He said, "Not yet." When you were ready to run, He said, "Be still." You felt overlooked, but you were actually being preserved. Because when your moment comes, and it will not be small. Heaven does not invest years of preparation into something temporary. Your hidden years were proof that your calling is long-term. There were times when you questioned if obedience was worth it, if the loneliness had any meaning. But look around your life now. The things that once overwhelmed you have not destroyed you. The battles that tried to bury you have instead built you. You carry wisdom now, discernment, and a peace that cannot be stolen. These are the treasures of the hidden life. You may not realize it, but you've already changed. The pain that once broke you has become your strength. The silence that once felt heavy has become your sanctuary. You've learned to recognize the whispers of God, even in the dark, and that chosen one is priceless. Heaven's record keeper has not only seen your tears, He has scheduled your recompense. What you carried in private will be rewarded in public. But the reward is not simply material, it's spiritual authority, divine peace, and unshakable confidence. You are becoming someone who cannot be moved by storms because you have already survived the flood. Think of how far you've come. The version of you from years ago would be astonished by your strength today. You've endured, forgiven, grown, and kept believing. That's why heaven is preparing to bring visibility to your obedience. When God begins to bless you openly, remember that every tear played a part. None of them were forgotten, and not one fell unnoticed. So breathe. Chosen one, rest in the truth that your pain was not pointless. You were never abandoned, you were being written into eternity. You are the living proof that God keeps records, and He rewards those who remain faithful. Soon, the same God who gathered your tears will pour out blessings that will make those tears make sense. Your story is still unfolding. The page you are on now is filled with divine handwriting, proof that heaven keeps perfect records of love, loss, and loyalty. And in those sacred records, your name shines bright. Chosen one. Can you feel the air shifting? The ground beneath your feet is no longer still, it's stirring with movement. Divine movement. For years, it felt as if nothing was changing, as if your prayers echoed into the void. But now, something unseen is awakening. The soil that once seemed barren is cracking open, and the first sprouts of your obedience are pushing through. You are standing in the moment between hidden preparation and public revelation. Heaven has been silent, not because you were forgotten, but because the story was being rewritten. You obeyed in faith. And now the reward is near. Heaven speaks clearly through the words in Deuteronomy, chapter 28, verses 1 and 2. If you fully obey the Lord your God and carefully follow all his commands, the Lord your God will set you high above all the nations on earth. All these blessings will come on you and accompany you if you obey the Lord your God. The shift begins with that simple truth. Obedience always births overflow. You have sown tears, and you are about to reap joy. You have endured storms, and you are about to walk in sunlight. The very ground that held your pain will now hold your promise. Think of a seed buried deep in the dark. It feels forgotten, hidden, pressed beneath the weight of earth. Yet, beneath that pressure, life begins. Roots form where no one can see, stretching deeper until the sprout breaks through. That is you, chosen one. You've been buried by circumstances, pressed by delays, covered by misunderstanding, but in that hidden place, you grew strong. You were never buried to die. You were buried to bloom. Now the soil is moving. The blessing that was held back is aligning. What was written long ago in heaven's archive is about to unfold on earth. You are standing at the dawn of divine reversal. The night has done its part. Now the morning is coming. When the first rays of sunrise touch a field after a long storm, the drops of rain still glisten like jewels on the blades of grass. That's how heaven sees your scars. They shine now. They are proof that you survived. They are proof that obedience was not weakness but wisdom. Beloved, you are about to witness what obedience can do when heaven decides it's time. The doors that refused to open before will now swing wide with ease. The opportunities that seemed locked are being unbolted. The same silence that once frustrated you is now working in your favor. Heaven was aligning what your eyes could not yet see. And when the blessing arrives, it will not come in fragments, it will come in waves. Financial provision, healing, restoration, reconciliation, all synchronized by divine timing. The shift begins now. But hear this with humility. This blessing is not just for you. It flows through you. You are a vessel of distribution, not just a receiver. God blesses you to bless others. When favor arrives, let it move freely through your hands. Like a river, blessing stagnates when it stops flowing. So, as this message reaches your heart, remember, help the flow continue. Support what feeds your spirit. When you like, you testify that your spirit agrees. When you share, you spread light into dark timelines. When you subscribe, you stay connected to the stream of prophetic truth that sustains you. And when you donate, you plant back into the very field that fed you, ensuring that others who hunger for hope can also be reached. Do it not out of obligation, but as an act of gratitude. Like the widow who poured oil into the prophet's vessel, your act of giving multiplies what you have. Every drop you pour carries fragrance before heaven's throne. Giving is not loss, it's partnership. It's saying, God, I believe in what you are doing through this. You have come too far to treat this as ordinary. This word found you because heaven trusts you. The shift is happening, and you are being positioned for visibility, favor, and purpose. So, walk with expectation, but also with generosity. Your obedience has already set the stage. Your faith will now call the actors forward. Blessing is not coming slowly, it's coming suddenly. The wind of God is behind you now. Where you once pushed to move forward, now you will glide. What was uphill will level. What was hard will soften. You will see how obedience moves mountains when the timing aligns with divine favor. Chosen one, lift your eyes. The sky is clearing. The horizon is gold. You are walking into your harvest season, and heaven rejoices at your arrival. Chosen one, you can feel it, can't you? That stirring inside your chest, the sense that something beyond understanding is unfolding. Heaven is opening a gate that has long been locked. A gate that your obedience alone has the key for. You have waited, prayed, and stood still when everything in you wanted to rush ahead. And now, the patience that cost you so much is about to pay back more than you can imagine. There were moments when you wondered if God heard you. You asked, "Lord, have you forgotten me?" But while you questioned, heaven was moving. What you thought was delay was really divine construction. God was not saying no, He was saying, "Not yet." The foundation of what He is building for you required time, alignment, and purification. Now, all three have come together. It is written in the book of Isaiah, chapter 1, verse 19, "If you are willing and obedient, you will eat the good things of the land." No, this is not a future promise. It is a present invitation. If you are willing, that means your heart's posture matters. You didn't just obey outwardly, you obeyed with a surrendered spirit. You didn't just do what was right, you desired what was right. That is why the gates are opening for you now. Imagine, for a moment, a mighty dam holding back a vast river. For years, the water builds pressure, unseen yet unstoppable. Then one day, a single command releases it, and the flood rushes forward with power no hand can resist. That's what heaven is about to do in your life. Every tear, every seed, every act of faith has built pressure in the spirit. The flood of blessing is about to break through. You will see the release in many forms. For some, it will come as peace after years of turmoil. For others, it will come as restoration in relationships or finances. And for you, it may come as divine clarity, the lifting of confusion that once clouded your purpose. However it manifests, it will be unmistakable. You will know this is not coincidence. This is heaven rewarding obedience. Chosen one, listen closely. The blessing that is coming is not random, it is specific. It has your name on it. It carries the scent of your obedience, the fingerprint of your faith. Others may try to claim it, but they cannot, because it was never theirs to begin with. It belongs to the one who endured, to the one who stayed faithful when no one was watching. Do not be surprised when the pace of your life accelerates. The same God who asked you to wait is now saying, "Move." The delay is breaking. Opportunities will begin to appear quickly. Doors that once rejected you will suddenly invite you. Don't second guess it. Don't overthink it. Step through with humility, but also with confidence. You were prepared for this. There is a sweetness that comes when obedience meets reward. You'll feel it like the first drop of rain after a long drought, refreshing. Healing. Undeniable. This is not luck. This is divine timing. You have proven trustworthy with small things, and heaven is now releasing greater things into your hands. But remember this: blessing is both a gift and a responsibility. The same obedience that opened the gate must guide how you walk through it. Stay grounded. Stay grateful. Stay generous. Don't let comfort replace conviction. You are blessed to be a beacon. Now, take a moment and let this truth settle. The gate is open. What was once withheld is now flowing freely toward you. Favor is finding your address. The promises that seem delayed are knocking on your door. The season of watching others be blessed while you waited is over. It's your turn to taste and see that the Lord is good. If this word resonates deep in your spirit, if you feel the confirmation in your chest, then type this number as your prophetic act: 444. That number symbolizes the completion of divine alignment. It declares that heaven, earth, and your heart are now in agreement. When you write 444, you are saying, I am in position. I receive what obedience has unlocked. You are not asking, you are acknowledging. The gate of blessing is not somewhere far away. It is opening right where you stand. You are stepping into the flow of favor, into the rhythm of divine reward. The years of faithful obedience have brought you here. So, breathe. Chosen one, lift your head and let heaven's wind touch your face. The blessing gate is open and it will not close again. Chosen one, there will come a moment when the same eyes that looked down on you will have to look up. The ones who doubted, mocked, or dismissed, you will have no choice but to witness what obedience produces. You won't need to explain yourself. Heaven will do that for you. Your life will become its own sermon, a living parable of what happens when a soul chooses submission over rebellion. There was a time when people called you naive for trusting God's timing. They thought your patience meant weakness, that your quietness meant defeat. But heaven was keeping score. Every time you bit your tongue instead of arguing, every time you forgave instead of fighting, every time you honored God when it hurt, He wrote it down. And now, the moment of public honor approaches. We find it written in the book of Psalms, chapter 23, verse 5. You prepare a table before me in the presence of my enemies. You anoint my head with oil, my cup overflows. And David understood what you now live. The table is not prepared in private. It is set before the very eyes that once watched you suffer. God does not humiliate your enemies. He elevates you before them. The difference is subtle, but sacred. Vindication is never rooted in revenge. It is rooted in revelation. It shows the world that obedience works. There is a divine poetry in how God arranges justice. The same mouths that spoke curses will be forced to speak congratulations. The same spaces that once rejected you will need what you carry. You won't return to gloat, you'll return to serve. That is the mark of true elevation. You rise, but your heart stays gentle. Picture it like a gardener who watches a seedling that others call dead. He never gave up watering, never stopped believing. When spring comes and the garden blooms, the ones who mocked his patience stand silent before the colors. That is what is coming for you. The very field where you were ridiculed will become your testimony ground. Some will ask, how did it happen? They'll assume you made secret connections or followed worldly strategies. But the truth will shine through every part of your story. It was obedience. While others chased shortcuts, you stayed the long route. While they schemed, you surrendered. And now, heaven rewards differently. Chosen one, when the elevation comes, walk carefully. The spotlight is a test, just like the wilderness was. You were faithful in obscurity. Now, be faithful in visibility. Let the same humility that sustained you in the shadows keep you steady under the light. Fame can shake what faith once built, if the heart forgets who gave the increase. So keep your eyes on the giver, not the gift. Remember, your rise is not meant to embarrass others, it's meant to awaken them. Some who once mocked you will come quietly, asking for prayer, for wisdom, for guidance. Don't harden your heart. You are the proof that mercy still works, that repentance is still welcome. You are not just blessed to enjoy comfort, you are blessed to extend compassion. Even now, heaven arranges the stage, the people, places, and opportunities that align with your next season are being positioned. You may sense new names entering your life, unexpected alliances, conversations that feel divinely orchestrated. None of it is random. These are markers that your preparation season has done its job. And yet, even in blessing, stay anchored. Never forget the nights you prayed for this moment. Never lose the gratitude that carried you through your wilderness. The sound of worship that once rose from your pain must continue now in your prosperity. Gratitude keeps glory from becoming pride. When the anointing oil is poured upon your head, it doesn't erase the scars, it makes them shine. Every wound you endured in obedience becomes a place where the light of God reflects brightest. The people watching will not just see success, they'll see redemption. They'll see that obedience leads to overflow, not because of human effort, but because of divine faithfulness. So, stand tall, chosen one, not in arrogance, but in awe. You are living proof that God keeps His word. He did not forget you in the valley, and He will not fail you on the mountaintop. The table is being set. The oil is being poured, and your cup is filling. Those who doubted you will see, and those who believed with you will rejoice. Your story is the evidence. Your life is the sermon, and heaven smiles. Because you never needed to fight for visibility, God Himself has chosen to display you. Chosen one. Every season of divine replacement begins quietly. It rarely begins with thunder or applause, but with whispers, doors closing, people leaving, opportunities shifting. To the natural eye, it looks like loss. To heaven's eye, it is realignment. You may not have realized it at first, but each departure in your life has been ordered by divine design. The wrong voices had to leave so that the right ones could arrive. You have been walking through what Scripture calls the changing of the guard. Heaven never removes without replacing. When one Saul is dethroned, a David is anointed. When one lamp burns out, a brighter one is lit. You, beloved, are part of that divine exchange. The Lord is removing those who disobeyed His instruction so that those who still listen, those like you, can rise. It was written in the first book of Samuel, chapter 15, verse 23, "For rebellion is as the sin of witchcraft, and stubbornness is as iniquity and idolatry. Because you have rejected the word of the Lord, He has also rejected you from being king." And those are heavy words, but within them lies the pattern of God's justice. Saul's disobedience did not just cost him a throne, it opened space for David's destiny. And that, chosen one, is what is happening now. You have been positioned for promotion, not because you demanded it, but because others refused their assignments. When they said no, heaven turned toward you. The replacements of heaven are never born of jealousy or revenge. They are born of necessity. When the work must go on, God raises new hands. He is faithful to his purpose, and he searches the earth for those whose hearts are fully yielded. That is you. You didn't chase this calling, it chased you. You may not feel qualified, but qualification was never a requirement. Obedience was. The mantle does not fall on the loudest, the strongest, or the most visible. It falls on the willing. While others argued about what they wanted, you quietly whispered, "Here I am, Lord." That whisper moved heaven. It became the sound that triggered divine replacement. Look back for a moment. Notice how certain relationships ended without explanation. How spaces that once celebrated you suddenly grew cold. It wasn't sabotage, it was separation. God was clearing the stage. Some people had reached the limits of their obedience, and he could no longer entrust them with what comes next. But you, because you kept saying yes, became the vessel through which his plan would continue. This is why you felt the weight increase, the responsibility, the pressure, the new expectations. These are signs that the mantle has shifted. You have been walking through what Scripture calls the changing of the guard. Heaven never removes without replacing. When one Saul is dethroned, a David is anointed. When one lamp burns out, a brighter one is lit. You, beloved, are part of that divine exchange. The Lord is removing those who disobeyed his instruction so that those who still listen, those like you, can rise. The Lord does not replace to humiliate, he replaces to redeem. And yet, every new mantle comes with its own warfare. Those who were once comfortable in their position may resist the change. Don't respond in pride or fear. Stay still. Stay kind. Stay focused. God himself will vindicate the transition. David never fought Saul for the throne. He simply continued to obey. And in due time, heaven settled the matter publicly. The same will happen for you. Chosen one. The oil that now rests upon you is heavy because it carries legacy. You are walking into assignments that others forfeited. The prayers they ignored are now being answered through your life. Heaven's projects that sat unfinished are being completed by your hands. That is why the weight feels new, why your spirit feels stretched, because you have inherited both promise and purpose. There is no need to fear. God does not promote without equipping. The same Spirit that called you will strengthen you where you feel unprepared. Grace will fill the gaps where you feel alone. Divine partnerships will appear. Heaven always funds what it appoints. So walk forward with quiet confidence. You are part of the divine replacement season, the great exchange where the disobedient step aside and the faithful step forward. The anointing that once rested elsewhere now flows through you. Do not shrink back. Rise with humility and boldness, knowing this truth. When one heart rejects God's instruction, another heart is chosen to continue his story. And today, that heart is yours. Chosen one. The glory that rests upon you now did not arrive cheaply. It is the weight of divine recognition, heaven's acknowledgement that you passed tests others couldn't endure. You are stepping into the visible phase of your journey. But never forget the invisible years that built your strength. Your obedience was not a single act, it was a lifestyle. A posture of surrender forged in fire. When the anointing grows heavier, many confuse it with pressure. but it is not the same. Pressure crushes, glory fills. What you feel now is not the weight of burden, but the gravity of divine trust. Heaven is placing on your shoulders something sacred, something powerful authority born of endurance. The Apostle Paul described it perfectly in his second letter to the Corinthians, chapter 4, verse 17. Our light troubles are achieving for us eternal glory that far outweighs them all. That glory, the one you now feel, did not appear suddenly. It was crafted in silence. Every heartbreak, every prayer through tears, every moment you chose, faith over fear, became threads of light woven into the garment you now wear. What once looked like suffering was actually construction. Heaven was weaving glory into your very being. And now, the weight you carry is not to break you, it's to make you shine. Glory cannot dwell in shallow hearts. It requires depth, humility, and purification. That's why God allowed you to walk through such refining seasons. He was preparing you not for applause, but for authority. Think of pure gold. Before it glows, it is melted. Before it shines, it is stripped of everything that is not itself. You have been through that process. The refining fire removed everything that could not handle your next level. What's left is pure faith, trust, and resilience. This is the weight of glory, and only the tested can carry it without collapsing. You will notice that your presence now shifts atmospheres. Where you walk, peace follows. Where you speak, things align. People might not understand it, but they feel it. It's not charisma, it's consecration. It's the residue of heaven upon a life that refused to disobey. You have become a living temple, and the fragrance of your faith lingers wherever you go. But remember, glory is not for self-display, it is for divine demonstration. The anointing that rests on you now is not ornamental, it is operational. You are not crowned to be admired. You are crowned to conquer darkness, to heal, to intercede, to restore. This glory carries responsibility, and yes, some will envy it. They will think your elevation happened overnight, not realizing how many nights you cried yourself into obedience. They will see the glow, but not the grind. Do not waste energy explaining yourself. Let your fruit speak. Real glory doesn't need an announcement. It reveals itself through impact. Chosen one. There's something sacred about your current moment. The heavens are observing you with delight. You've become a living testimony of what endurance births. Your life now echoes a message. Obedience leads to overflow. Faithfulness leads to favor. And surrender leads to strength. Still, even in this glory, stay small before God. The higher you rise, the lower you must bow. Humility keeps the oil flowing. Gratitude keeps the fire burning. And when you remember the journey, pride finds no room to enter. You are now a vessel of divine glory, a torchbearer in dark times. When you speak encouragement, chains break. When you walk into a room, peace arrives first. This is the evidence that heaven trusts you with more than blessing it, trusts you with representation. You are no longer just receiving from heaven, you are reflecting it. Pause for a moment and let that truth sink deep. You are carrying something eternal. The storms did not take you out, they refined you into light. The very battles that once threatened to destroy you have become your credentials in the Spirit. The enemy cannot discredit what endurance has authenticated. If this word is confirming what your spirit already knows, write this as your declaration. Carry the glory. Then type it below, not as a phrase to impress others, but as a personal covenant between you and heaven. Carry the glory means you choose to walk with reverence, humility, and faith. It means you understand that your victories are not for boasting, but for blessing. It means you vow to honor the anointing that rests upon you and to let your life continue to reflect the heart of the one who chose you. Chosen one. You are radiant now, not because of what you achieved, but because of what you survived. The weight of glory rests on you, and heaven is smiling. Chosen one. The season you are entering will not resemble the one you left behind. The silence that once wrapped around your obedience is about to give way to sound, the sound of recognition, of unveiling, of prophetic exposure. What was hidden is now being brought to light, not to embarrass, but to exalt. Heaven has decided that your obedience can no longer remain unseen. The Lord moves in mysterious patterns, unveiling those he once kept in the shadows. There is divine timing to visibility. God hides his treasures until the appointed hour, for premature exposure would destroy what patience was meant to protect. And now, that hour has come, as Jesus himself declared in the Gospel of Matthew, chapter 6, verse 6. When you pray, go to your room, pray to the Father, who is unseen. He will reward what's done secretly. You prayed in secret, and heaven listened. You obeyed when no one clapped, and now heaven claps for you. The time of hidden obedience is transforming into the time of visible reward. But even as the light grows brighter, your heart must remain anchored in humility. Visibility is not validation, it is stewardship. Think of a lighthouse standing alone on the cliff, through storms, wind, and isolation. It stands unmoved. Its purpose is not to be admired, but to guide others safely through darkness. You are that lighthouse now. Your elevation is not for attention, but for direction. The world will see your light and find the courage to obey in their own storms. The reward of obedience is not luxury, it is legacy. What you are carrying now will inspire generations who come after you. You have become proof that patience has power, that surrender still works, that holiness still leads to harvest. When people look at your life, they will see that God does not overlook the faithful. And as this message reaches you, I want to speak to your heart with sincerity. If these words have watered your soul, if they have reminded you of your divine purpose, then keep this light flowing forward. Every act of engagement, every like, every share, every subscription is not about numbers, it's about reach. When you lift this message, you help another weary heart find their lighthouse. And if you have the ability to donate, do so as an act of planting into fertile soil. It's not about money, it's about mission. It's like handing water to a traveler who has been walking through a desert of discouragement. Your gift becomes the stream that keeps this word alive, allowing hope to reach those who might otherwise never hear that they are chosen too. When you partner with heaven's work, you're not giving something away, you're multiplying it. Think of a candle lighting another candle. The first loses nothing, but the darkness loses much. That is what your support does. You keep the flame alive. Beloved, you are standing at a divine intersection, the place where hidden prayer meets public power. Heaven has been storing your faith like treasure. and now it's being poured back into your life in visible form. Don't be surprised when new opportunities appear, when people begin to see your value, when your voice begins to echo farther than before. That's the Father's reward manifesting. Still, guard your heart. Fame is a fragile wind. It lifts easily, but it also shifts quickly. Stay rooted in what brought you here: prayer, humility, and obedience. Let your rising never make you forget your foundation. The same secret place that birthed your reward must remain your resting place. Your story now becomes someone else's survival guide. Somewhere, a soul is about to give up, thinking God has forgotten them. When they see your journey, your glow, your peace, they will realize obedience still works. You are heaven's evidence that silence is not absence, that faith is not foolishness, that delay is not denial. So, as this light shines on you, keep reflecting it. Let your life point upward, not inward. Let every blessing become a message, every miracle a testimony, every victory a reminder that obedience brings visibility only to those who can handle the weight of humility. The unveiling has begun, and heaven smiles. What was done in secret is now being sung in the open. Your Father's reward is here, gentle, radiant, undeniable. And now, it is your turn to shine like the lighthouse on the cliff, guiding others home through the same storms you once survived. Chosen one. Endurance has written your story in sacred ink. What you endured was not random, it was divine preparation. The nights when you lay awake, asking, "Why must I carry so much?" were not moments of punishment, they were moments of forging. Heaven was shaping you in the hidden furnace of patience, refining you until endurance itself became your crown. You've walked through seasons where you felt stripped of everything familiar. Pause for a moment and let that truth sink deep. You are carrying something eternal. The storms did not take you out. They refined you into light. The very battles that once threatened to destroy you have become your credentials in the spirit. The enemy cannot discredit what endurance has authenticated. If this word is confirming what your spirit already knows, write this as your declaration. Carry the glory. You have earned your crown not through perfection, but through persistence. You didn't always feel holy. You didn't always feel strong, but you showed up anyway. That is the language of endurance. Heaven never required you to be flawless. It required you to be faithful. Endurance doesn't mean the absence of pain. It means the refusal to let pain dictate your path. Every time you faced disappointment and still chose devotion, heaven marked it as victory. Each sigh of surrender, each step of faith, each tear that fell in trust, all became jewels set into your crown. There is a difference between those who start strong and those who finish faithful. Many begin with passion, but only a few stay when the fire of trials burns hot. You stayed. That is why heaven calls you overcomer. The crown of endurance is not given to the loud or the famous, it is given to the quiet. Steady hearts who kept believing even when no one was watching. Think of a marathon runner nearing the finish line. The crowd cheers for the sprint at the end, but heaven remembers every weary step in the middle. That's how God sees you. He remembers every season where you ran on empty but refused to stop. The applause of man may have been silent, but the applause of heaven thundered above you. And now, chosen one, you are entering the moment of reward. The season of constant testing is ending, and peace is beginning to crown your days. But endurance has done more than bring you victory. It has transformed you. You no longer react to storms the way you once did. You don't panic when things shake, because you've learned that shaking never breaks the unshakable. The strength you carry now is quiet but unyielding. It is not built on emotion, but on revelation. You know that the same God who held you in the valley will sustain you on the mountain. That's why you can walk with calm confidence through uncertainty. Endurance has taught you that faith is not about feeling, it's about trusting. Look at your reflection. Beloved, you don't look the same because you're not the same. There's a glow in your eyes that wasn't there before, the light of someone who has seen God's faithfulness in the dark. That light is not decoration, it's declaration. It tells every power of darkness that you are no longer an easy target. You have become a fortress of faith. This crown upon your spirit is invisible to most, but not to heaven. Angels recognize it. The enemy respects it. It's the mark of one who refused to quit. The trials that once tormented you now bow beneath your feet, because endurance has turned your weakness into authority. You no longer just survive storms, you command peace within them. Still, do not forget, the crown you carry is not for pride, but for purpose. Crowns are symbols of responsibility. You endured not only for your own destiny, but also for those who will walk the path behind you. Your story of perseverance will become their map out of despair. When they see how you stood, they will find courage to keep standing. So, chosen one, wear your invisible crown with quiet dignity. Let gratitude be your garment and humility your throne. You did not earn this through striving, but through surrender. You did not fight for fame, but for faithfulness, and that has made all the difference. You are crowned, not because you never fell, but because you always rose. The same God who watched you endure will now use your endurance to inspire multitudes, and when you finally rest, heaven will whisper the words that carried you all along. Well done, faithful one. Chosen one. Can you sense the pace of heaven increasing around you? The air feels different. Now charged, alive, filled with motion. What once moved slowly now begins to move swiftly. You have stepped into divine acceleration. The things that took years for others will unfold for you in months. The obstacles that delayed you before will part like waters before your feet. Heaven has decided that the waiting season is over. The prophet once wrote that there is a time for everything under heaven, a time to sow and a time to reap, a time to weep and a time to dance. You have wept, you have sown, and now the reaping time has come. The waiting was not wasted, it was alignment. The gears of divine timing are clicking perfectly into place, and your life is being carried forward by a supernatural wind. As was written in the book of Habakkuk, chapter 2, verse 3, "For the revelation awaits an appointed time. It speaks of the end and will not prove false. Though it linger, wait for it. It will certainly come and will not delay." For years, you felt like nothing was happening. The dream remained still while time kept moving. You questioned if maybe you had misunderstood God's promise. But no, chosen one, you did not miss it. The promise did not die. It was simply maturing beneath the soil. Heaven was aligning the right people, the right season, and the right strength within you. Now, all three have converged. Divine acceleration is different from human hurry. It is not chaos. It is perfect rhythm. When heaven accelerates something, it carries you forward effortlessly, like a river catching a drifting leaf. What once required your striving will now require only your surrender. The same doors that resisted you before will open as though magnetized by grace. You may find yourself overwhelmed by how quickly things begin to happen. Connections, opportunities, breakthroughs. But remember, this is not random. It is the harvest of years of obedience. Heaven does not forget. Every yes you whispered in the dark is now echoing through open doors in the light. Picture a bow being drawn back for a long time. The tension increases. The waiting grows unbearable. But then the release comes and the arrow flies farther than anyone expected. That's you, chosen one. The longer you waited, the further God intends to send you. The tension was necessary to build momentum. The pullback was preparation for projection. You are stepping into a season where what took years to build will now multiply in days. Divine acceleration doesn't bypass process. It redeems time lost to delay. It is heaven's way of saying, I have not forgotten you, and I am making up for every moment that felt wasted. End of quote. But as the pace increases, stay anchored. Acceleration without grounding leads to burnout. Let prayer be your steering wheel and peace your brake. The same humility that carried you through waiting must now carry you through winning. Move quickly, but not recklessly. God is not just speeding you up, He is steering you precisely. Chosen one. Understand that acceleration also brings visibility. When God speeds up your path, people will notice. Some will celebrate, others will question. Do not waste your breath explaining divine timing to human understanding. Just keep walking. Those who doubted will see soon enough that heaven has its own calendar. There is also restoration hidden in this speed. The years you thought were lost are being returned in multiplied form. What the enemy tried to delay, heaven is now accelerating. You will accomplish in 1 year what once seemed impossible in 10. But it is not about pride, it is about purpose. Heaven is hastening your steps because the assignment cannot wait any longer. So when the breakthroughs start cascading, when the rhythm of your life begins to pulse with divine energy, pause and give thanks. Every acceleration deserves a moment of adoration. Lift your gratitude higher than your excitement, for gratitude keeps the engine pure. And if your spirit bears witness to this word, if something inside you leaps at the thought of divine timing catching up with your destiny, then type this prophetic number as your declaration, 555. That number represents divine movement, the grace of change, and the perfect rhythm of transformation. By writing 555, you are saying, God, I am ready to move at your pace. I align with your timing, not my own. It is not superstition, it is symbolism, a faith act that mirrors heaven's acceleration in your life. You are no longer crawling, you are soaring. The winds of God are beneath you, lifting you higher, carrying you faster, taking you farther than effort ever could. The waiting was long, but the fulfillment will be swift. You have entered the speed of grace. Chosen one. A few ever realize that sometimes God uses one person's obedience to expose another's rebellion. You have been that mirror, the divine measurement by which others' hearts were revealed. Without even knowing it, your faithfulness became their test. You didn't set out to convict anyone, you were simply doing what you were told. But obedience always casts light, and light always reveals what darkness hides. That is why some people began to distance themselves from you. They told themselves it was because you had changed. But what really changed was the level of truth your life carried. Your obedience became uncomfortable to those who refused to obey. They could no longer be at ease around you because your surrender reminded them of their resistance. It was never personal, it was spiritual. The ancient words recorded in the letter to the Romans, chapter 5, verse 19, speak clearly. For just as through the disobedience of one man many were made sinners, so also through the obedience of one man many will be made righteous. This verse is more than theology. It's the rhythm of heaven's justice. Your obedience, like Christ's, carries ripple effects. It doesn't just bless you, it exposes, awakens, and transforms the environment around you. Wherever true obedience stands, rebellion trembles. Do you remember when certain doors suddenly shut, or relationships that once felt safe began to fracture? That was not failure, it was revelation. God was showing you who truly walked with Him and who only walked nearby. When you said yes, it forced others to confront their no. Some responded with repentance, others with resentment. That's what light does, it divides. You may have wondered, why does my obedience cost me so many connections? Because obedience purifies atmosphere. It filters your circle until only the aligned remain. Heaven could not elevate you while you were surrounded by unsubmitted hearts. They had to leave so you could breathe. They had to go so your spirit could grow. Think of a tree in the changing of seasons. When autumn arrives, the leaves fall. Not because the tree is dying, but because it must prepare for new growth. The falling away is necessary. Likewise, the people and places that fell from your life were not punishment, they were pruning. You are entering a spring season of new fruit, but the old branches could not bear it. Sometimes God allows your obedience to irritate disobedience, not to shame others, but to awaken them. Your steadfastness has made some question their own compromises. Your peace has unsettled their excuses. And though they may resist now, one day they will remember you as the moment God knocked on their heart. You have been both an example and a mirror, a living sermon without speaking a word. Understand this. Chosen one, your life preaches louder than any platform. Every decision you make in obedience sends ripples through the unseen realm. When you forgive, you silence hell. When you refuse temptation, you shame demons. When you keep believing in the middle of chaos, you glorify heaven itself. You have become a walking declaration that obedience still matters in a disobedient world. That's why the warfare against you was so intense. The enemy wasn't after your comfort, he was after your consistency. He knew that if you kept obeying, others would see and follow. Your yes is contagious. It stirs the sleeping, awakens the weary, convicts the careless. Hell fears obedient hearts because they are proof that submission to God still works. Do not carry resentment toward those who failed their tests because of you. You were never their enemy. You were their opportunity. Your obedience gave them a chance to rise. Whether they took it or not was their decision, not your failure. You have fulfilled your part by standing firm. And now, because you endured misunderstanding and isolation, heaven will use you to teach others what it means to truly follow. You won't even need to force influence. It will flow naturally. People will see the fruit of your choices and realize what obedience can create. You will become a blueprint for the broken, a map for the misled. So hold your peace. Don't look back with guilt or pride. What God exposed through your obedience was necessary. He used your life to separate wheat from chaff, truth from deception, real from imitation. You were not the cause of their fall. You were the revelation of their choice. Chosen one. You are the test that proves truth still lives. Your obedience has exposed rebellion, but it has also invited redemption. You have not divided, you have purified, and heaven celebrates that purity now. Chosen one. The sound of reversal is already echoing in the unseen realm. You may not hear it with your ears, but your spirit recognizes it, the quiet shifting of divine justice. For so long, it seemed like those who ignored God's voice were flourishing while you, who obeyed, waited in silence. But heaven never forgets the balance of righteousness. The scale is tilting now, and everything that once worked against you is beginning to work for you. There is a pattern in how God moves. First, He allows the proud to build their stage. Then, when the time is right, He calls forth the humble to stand upon it. The ones who thought they had written you out of the story are about to witness your name written into the next chapter, not through revenge, but through redemption. Not because you demanded it, but because God delights in showing that obedience never ends in shame. We see this beautifully illustrated in the book of Esther, chapter 6, verses 10 and 11. The king said, "Go at once, and do as you have suggested for Mordecai the Jew, who sits at the king's gate. Do not neglect anything you have recommended." So Haman got the robe and the horse. He robed Mordecai and led him on horseback through the city streets, proclaiming before him, "This is what is done for the man the king delights to honor." That, beloved, is the sound of reversal. The very one who plotted against Mordecai became the messenger of his honor. The same people who laughed at your obedience will soon become witnesses and sometimes even instruments of your exaltation. They won't understand how it happened so quickly, how tables turned so quietly, but it will be undeniable. Heaven has remembered you. Reversal does not happen with noise. It moves silently, like dawn chasing away the night. One moment, the darkness still seems thick. The next, light floods the horizon. That's what your life is about to feel like. It will happen gradually. Then, suddenly, the doors that were locked will swing open. The positions once denied you will seek you out. The voices that dismissed you will shift to bless you. Do not gloat when it happens. Keep your heart pure. Reversal is not permission to repay evil with evil. It is the opportunity to display grace. When those who wronged you return, they will come not as enemies, but as learners. Welcome them with peace, not pride. Your humility will preach louder than your vindication. Think of how Joseph stood before his brothers, the very ones who betrayed him. He could have used his power to humiliate them, but instead he used it to heal. That is the true mark of divine reversal. It transforms victims into vessels of mercy. You are not being lifted to prove others wrong. You are being lifted to prove God right. Even now, heaven is rearranging the stage of your life. The scenery is shifting, the script is changing, and the roles are being rewritten. Those who once had the spotlight will step aside as God highlights the faithful. You won't need to announce anything. The results will speak. The fruit of your endurance will testify louder than any defense ever could. And when the moment of reversal arrives, it won't just bless you, it will bless those connected to you. Your elevation will create space for others to rise. Just as Mordecai's honor led to Esther's boldness and the salvation of a nation, your vindication will ripple outward, touching lives you never imagined. This reversal is not a small thing. It is heaven's way of closing an old chapter of struggle and opening a new chapter of stability. You will move from constantly fighting for position to resting in divine favor. What used to require striving will now flow naturally. The season of proving yourself is ending. The season of being established has begun. Remember, chosen one. The sound of reversal is not chaos, it's harmony. It is the melody of heaven setting all things right. Every injustice, every misunderstanding, every betrayal, they are all being rewritten into testimony. The same mouths that once spoke doubt will declare praise. The same situations that caused you pain will become proof of God's power. So walk quietly, with gratitude. The reversal is already in motion. You don't have to chase it, you just have to stay aligned with it. God is writing the end of the story. And in this ending, righteousness wins. You will not return to where you were. You will not repeat the same cycles. The old order has fallen, and the new one stands in its place. This is the sound of reversal, the sacred rhythm of divine justice singing over your life. Chosen one. This is the hour of public reward. The long-hidden seeds of obedience that you planted in tears are now breaking the surface. What was invisible is becoming undeniable. The years you thought were lost have been woven into a divine tapestry that is now ready to be displayed. Heaven has decided that it is time for the world to see what faithfulness looks like when it's fully grown. The Apostle Peter once wrote in his first letter, chapter 5, verse 6, "Humble yourselves under God's hand, that he may lift you up in due time." This is your due time. The same mighty hand that shielded you in the shadows is now lifting you into the light. The reward is not random, it is righteous. God is not showing off. He is showing proof that humility still leads to honor. Imagine a mountain spring high in the cliffs. For years it bubbles unseen, carving paths through stone, quietly shaping the rock that confines it. Then, one day, it bursts through, cascading into the valley below, pure, unstoppable, life-giving. That's you, chosen one. Your hidden obedience has been carving unseen rivers in heaven's landscape. And now, the flow has begun. The water of favor is rushing freely, and everything it touches comes alive. People will see the transformation and marvel. How did it happen so suddenly? But you will know it wasn't sudden. It was years in the making. Every whispered prayer, every lonely step, every sacrifice, it all led to this. Heaven does not forget obedience, it multiplies it. And as you stand in this season of overflow, I speak to you not as a voice demanding, but as one reminding, when blessing flows, let generosity flow with it. You have become a river, not a reservoir. When you like, share, and subscribe, it's not about numbers, it's about keeping the stream alive. You help the message of faith flow beyond your own valley into places still dry with despair. If this word has found your spirit, consider leaving a comment, not for vanity, but for testimony. Sometimes your words become someone else's hope. When you write what God has done for you, Another soul who reads it may realize that their waiting, too, has meaning. You never know whose heart your story might water. And for those who can donate, do so not out of obligation, but as partnership. Think of it as planting a tree beside a river. You may never rest under its shade, but countless others will. Your gift, no matter how small, becomes part of heaven's circulation system, fueling the continuation of what feeds your own faith. When you pour into what nourishes your spirit, you are strengthening the very vessel that strengthens you. Your giving becomes an echo of gratitude, a quiet way of saying, "Lord, I remember where you found me." Every act of generosity, every seed sown in love, draws heaven's attention. God doesn't just bless obedience, He blesses participation in the spreading of light. You've seen how darkness multiplies quickly through words, algorithms, and voices that drain hope. Now, imagine light doing the same through you. Each time you share, each time you engage, you're pushing back the night. You are not just a listener, you are a torchbearer. Your obedience once lit your path, now your generosity lights the paths of others. And when you write your reflections, speak truth, and encourage others, heaven takes notice. Angels record testimonies as seeds for future harvests. The story you tell today might be the story that saves someone tomorrow. Never underestimate the ripple effect of your voice when it's guided by grace. Chosen one, you are now a display of divine artistry. Your life sings. This is what happens when a soul refuses to quit. God is not exalting you to boast in your strength, but to magnify His faithfulness. Every blessing, every open door, every healed wound, it's all a living banner that reads, "Obedience still works." So let your light shine, but keep your heart soft. Walk through your public reward with private reverence. Smile with humility. Celebrate with gratitude. And never stop watering others with the same grace that sustained you. This is your hour, not just to shine, but to share. You have become both testimony and teacher, blessing and bridge. And as you pour out, heaven will pour more in. The cycle will continue. The river will widen, and the glory will spread. Your reward is here. Chosen one, walk in it freely, faithfully, and full of grace. Chosen one, you are now standing in the place where loss begins to multiply. What you thought was taken from you is returning not as it was, but transformed. Heaven never restores in equal measure, it restores in overflow. The divine economy is multiplication, not replacement. Every act of obedience that seemed to cost you something was, in truth, a divine investment waiting for return. It was written long ago in the story of Job, chapter 42, verse 10. After Job prayed for his friends, the Lord restored his fortunes and gave him twice, as before. This verse is not ancient history. It is the spiritual law of restoration unfolding in your life right now. Job did not receive double because he complained or demanded. He received double because he remained faithful and forgiving even after loss. You, too, have chosen faith over bitterness. You prayed when it would have been easier to curse. You forgave when it would have been easier to harden your heart. And now, like Job, heaven counts your endurance and releases double portion grace. There is something mysterious about divine multiplication. It rarely arrives in the form you expect. Sometimes it's not wealth that doubles, but wisdom, not possessions, but peace, not crowds, but clarity. God multiplies what matters most for your calling. He gives increase where it will serve eternity. Not just emotion. You have matured enough now to receive what others might waste. Think back on what you lost, the friendships that faded, the opportunities that vanished, the seasons that ended too soon. They felt final, but they were actually exchanges. Heaven was not subtracting, it was swapping temporal things for eternal ones. You were being emptied so that greater fullness could fit. You didn't lose, it was an upgrade in disguise. Consider the farmer who releases seed into the soil. At first, it looks like loss. The seed disappears, buried in darkness, seemingly gone forever. But beneath the earth, unseen, life begins to multiply. One seed becomes many. One act of letting go becomes a harvest too large to count. That has been your story. Chosen one. You released what you could not keep. And now heaven returns what you cannot measure. And the most powerful part, the restoration comes with peace. In former seasons, your victories carried exhaustion. Now they will carry ease. The struggle to survive is turning into the rhythm of thriving. The blessings that once felt heavy will now flow lightly, because your heart has learned how to carry abundance without pride and loss, without despair. The mantle of multiplication is not merely about having more, it's about becoming more. You have grown in capacity. You can now handle greater responsibility, deeper relationships, and higher callings, because the old wounds have become wisdom. Pain expanded your spiritual lungs so you could breathe in more of heaven. You may find yourself noticing that the very areas where you once suffered the most are now the ones bearing the most fruit. Where you were betrayed, loyalty will now bloom. Where you were rejected, divine acceptance will overflow. Where doors once closed, entire corridors of opportunity will open. God doesn't just restore what was lost, He redeems it into something better. Even people who once turned away from you may return, not out of pity, but out of recognition. They will see that your faith has borne fruit. Yet, when they come, you won't meet them with resentment, you will meet them with peace. That is the true proof of restoration. Not that you got things back, but that you got your joy back. And in this new season, you will walk differently, no longer chasing, no longer pleading, no longer proving. You will move with quiet authority, because you know everything that belongs to you will find its way home. What left in pain will return in purpose. What seemed dead will bloom in ways no one imagined. This is the law of divine return. The faithful never finish empty. Heaven always pays its debt, and God's reward is never delayed beyond its perfect time. You are standing under that promise now. Your life is about to become a living testimony that obedience not only sustains it, multiplies. So, breathe deeply. Chosen one, feel the fullness of this moment. The empty hands you once lifted in surrender are now being filled with abundance. The same tears that once watered your soil have called forth this harvest. You have entered the mantle of multiplication, where every loss becomes seed, and every seed becomes glory. Chosen one, this is the place you were always meant to reach, the throne of completion. Not a throne of gold or power, but of peace. You have climbed through valleys of waiting, crossed deserts of silence, and scaled mountains of testing, and now you stand in the still air of fulfillment. The storm no longer rages around you, it bows beneath you. Every trial, every tear, every act of obedience has brought you here to the summit of divine purpose. It is written in the letter to the Philippians, chapter 1, verse 6, being confident of this, that he who began a good work in you will carry it on to completion until the day of Christ Jesus. End quote. Completion is not the end of activity, it is the end of striving. It's the moment when you realize that what God promised has not failed, and that all along, He was writing something bigger than your understanding. The unfinished chapters that once frightened you now make sense in the light of His faithfulness. Every delay, every detour, every closed door has found its purpose. You have become a living testimony of divine continuity, the proof that God finishes what He starts. Your journey has not been easy, but it has been exact. Every step you took was pre-measured by heaven's wisdom. Even your mistakes were woven into mercy's design. There was never a moment wasted, never a tear unseen, never a prayer unheard. Completion doesn't mean the absence of battle. It means victory no longer frightens you. You now understand that peace is stronger than control. You no longer chase outcomes. You trust the one who writes them. You no longer cling to blessings. You rest in the blesser. That is divine maturity, the transformation of obedience into rest. Look around your life. Chosen one. The things that once tormented you no longer hold power. The wounds that once bled now shine as scars of wisdom. You have moved from survival to sovereignty, not the sovereignty of self, but of surrender. You are no longer reacting to life. You are reigning through faith. The throne you now occupy is not made of material wealth or worldly influence. It is carved from patience, humility, and trust. Each trial you overcame became a piece of its foundation. Each act of forgiveness became one of its pillars. Each moment you chose obedience over ease became a jewel in its crown. Heaven did not forget a single sacrifice. When you gave without return, when you served without recognition, when you stayed faithful without reward, heaven was building this moment. The throne of completion is not about power, it's about perspective. You can now see what once confused you. The puzzle pieces fit. The chaos finds its order. And your heart finally exhales. And in this stillness, you will feel something new, holy authority. Not the kind that shouts or demands, but the kind that speaks and creation responds. You have been given dominion over the very things that once defeated you. Where you once wrestled with doubt, you now speak faith with ease. Where fear once ruled, peace now reigns. That is the reward of the faithful, the transformation of struggle into strength. Chosen one. This moment is sacred. It is not the finish line of your life, but the fulfillment of a divine cycle. A circle has closed, and another is about to begin. Yet this time, you will walk with wisdom rather than worry. You will move with peace rather than pressure. You will lead with compassion rather than fear. Those who meet you now will not recognize the version of you that once trembled through the fire. You are not the same. You carry heaven's calm. Your words carry weight because they have been birthed through experience. You no longer speak theory, you speak truth that has been lived, tested, and proven. Even creation itself seems to echo your transformation. The wind that once howled against you now moves at your command. The earth that once resisted your growth now nourishes it. You are aligned with divine order. The same God who began your journey has brought it full circle. and every step has become holy ground beneath your feet. So rest now, beloved, not because the work is over, but because the worker has been renewed. You are no longer striving for proof. You are living proof. You are the evidence that obedience leads to victory, that surrender leads to strength, that faith truly finishes what fear never could. The throne of completion is not a place of pride, it is the posture of peace. Sit in it quietly. Let gratitude be your crown, humility your robe, and wisdom your scepter. Heaven has called you faithful, and in the quiet chambers of eternity, your name has been written among those who endured and finished well. The story is not over, but the struggle is. You have reached completion, and the sound that fills heaven now is simple God whispering, "It is done." No, chosen one, take a breath. Let these words settle deep in your heart, like rain soaking the soil after a long drought. You've walked through the entire journey from silent obedience to glorious fulfillment, and heaven smiles upon you. The story that began with tears now ends in triumph. You have learned to trust the unseen, to keep walking even when you couldn't see the next step. And because of that, you now stand in the light of completion. But this is not an ending, it is a beginning. The message you have carried through these words was never meant to stop with you. Like a candle passing its flame to another, what you've received becomes brighter when you share it. Every like is a ripple of light through the darkness. Every share is a seed sown into someone's dry ground. Every comment you write carries testimony. It tells the world that faith still works, that obedience still blesses, that hope still wins. Let this moment be your declaration. Type your reflection, your gratitude, your revelation, not for applause, but for remembrance. Your words will echo longer than you imagine. Somewhere, someone scrolling through the chaos will stop, read your comment, and feel a pulse of life again. They'll whisper, "Maybe I'm chosen too." Oh, if this journey has reminded you of who you are, stay connected. Subscribe so you don't miss the next divine word appointed for your spirit. The flow of heaven continues, new messages, new revelations, new confirmations, all waiting for the hearts willing to listen. And if your heart feels stirred to pour back, to donate in gratitude, do it, not because you must, but because generosity is worship. Every drop of support becomes part of the river that carries hope to others. You are not giving away, you are passing forward the same grace that reached you. Remember, chosen one. This was never just a script. It was a conversation between heaven and your soul. You were called, corrected, comforted, and crowned. The story of obedience has been written across your life, and now your voice becomes part of heaven's melody. Lift your eyes. You are walking out of this message lighter, stronger, and crowned with peace. Let your light continue what these words began. Like, share, speak, and shine, because you, beloved, are one of God's chosen ones.